Let's talk supply chain. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Talk Supply Chain. Before we start, I have a brain teaser for you. Now, today's guest works for a brand that brings external and internal manufacturing functions together. But what percentage of the average brand owner's total production is managed by contract manufacturers? Outsourcing has grown and grown, so this could be a higher number than you might think. Well, let me know your guesses over on social and keep listening because all will be revealed at the end of the show. So today I'm excited to welcome a seasoned supply chain leader to our Woman in Supply Chain series. She's an expert in marketing and communications, and she works for a brand that is very close friends of the show. So with me today is Josephine Coombe. Now, over the course of her nearly 30-year career, Josephine has held senior executive roles with companies such as Bullfrog, Power, NRX, and Citraca Software, guiding these brands across the whole marketing mix. Now, as Chief Commercial Officer for Europe at Nulogy, Josephine is responsible for the growth of the business's brand and market presence in the UK and in Europe. So today, Josephine will be talking all about her career journey, how the world of supply chain marketing has changed, what we can learn from women in the industry who are thriving in Europe, and why it's never been a more exciting time to be in supply chain. But before I welcome Josephine, just need to give a shout out to our sponsor of the Woman in Supply Chain series, and that is Food Logistics and Supply and Demand Chain Executives. They have a Woman in Supply Chain award, plus they do an annual Woman in Supply Chain forum. So go and check it out. They are proud sponsors of this series. So welcome to the show, Josephine.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's great to be here.
I am excited to have you here. Now, we had Christine Barnhart on the show at the end of last year, and it went so well. She now has her own live show with us called Supply Chain Unfiltered. So I know firsthand that Nulogy women are absolute powerhouses. And from what I've seen, you're no exception. So let's get to know you. Can you give us a bit of your backstory? I mean, you have a degree and master's in English. You've used that to build an impressive communications career. Was that always the plan? And how did you end up specializing in technology and supply chain?
Well, it's interesting because I have I think a more artsy background than a lot of people in the software and supply chain world
Mhm.
for sure. And I wouldn't say that my career was planned, or at least the first half of it was perhaps more serendipity than planning. But I think around halfway through my career, I started being much more deliberate about where I was going as a professional. And at that point, the decisions I was making were more planned for sure. But I think, to some extent, and particularly for young women, allowing a little bit of the unexpected can take you down new paths that are very positive. And so mapping everything out isn't necessarily such a great thing.
I completely agree with you. And, you kind of don't know where it's going to take you. You got to try different things. You've got to be open to new things. Doors are going to open that you're kind of like, don't know about that, but why don't I
Mhm.
try it? Because you never know
Exactly.
unless you try, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Quite.
Well, and in the over 25 years you've spent in marketing, what's your take on how things have sort of changed? I mean, I launched the Creative Room, which is part of our secret society of supply chain. That's dedicated to marketing in this space because the industry is just moving so quickly. And I'm not sure we have the resources to help teams sort of keep that pace with it. So, what are some of the biggest changes, maybe, that you've seen, and how have things like brand and market positioning evolved for supply chain organizations, sort of in light of all of the disruptions and changes we've seen over the years?
Well, it's actually been a very interesting time for me over a sort of 30-year career to see the shifts in marketing because when I entered marketing, it was, as you've stressed, from a sort of communications talent base. And I would say that back then, marketing was to some extent more of an arts discipline than a scientific or analytical discipline. And clearly in the last sort of 10 to 15 years, it's changed dramatically in that regard. as digital marketing has enabled much more sort of analytical approaches to marketing, and the evolution and development of sort of new marketing technologies like HubSpot and so forth have really changed the nature of the marketing discipline itself. And those have created some interesting sort of developments in terms of professional careers, because I think we've always had marketers who leaned more to the artistic side, the branding, the advertising, that sort of thing, and then marketers who are more on the analytical, quantifiable marketing side. And today we very much need both. I've always leaned more to branding and communications, but I lean heavily on, often younger folks who are very accomplished with new marketing technologies to give us that kind of quantifiable view of the impact of the efforts we're undertaking in a marketing discipline. So it has been very interesting to watch that sort of evolution and to adjust as a professional to managing people who are much better at things that you actually yourself may not be that good at.
Right.
And I think that's in some ways the sort of the essence of good leadership that we all try to live up to is being able to let people who are talented at things you're not good at to shine and bring those skills to bear to kind of augment what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. And what you said there, I mean, marketing has become very data driven.
Yes.
And so it's one of the reasons why I think it's very necessary for marketing professionals to have a network, to have support, to learn some of the things that are changing so quickly, and to understand what they like to do, what they don't like to do, and be very upfront with it. Because, like you said, there is an artsy component to it, but then there's a data-driven component to it that
Yes.
organizations are expecting to see and understand. I think
Yes.
there's also that hidden component of dark social where
Mm-hmm.
you put out all of this content and you're doing all sorts of things, and not always can it be tracked or maybe quantified. Because,
Right.
and I'll share an example. I'm in a Facebook group scrolling down. I was looking at comments in some posts that was posted, and they posted about a book. I didn't comment. I didn't answer. I didn't say I was going to get the book. I just went and got the book and started listening to it.
Right.
And it's
Right.
those
Exactly.
types of things that are happening in the background that you don't
Yes.
necessarily know. And so a lot of people get a little bit discouraged when it comes to the data, right? There has to be a
Yes.
fine balance because,
There,
yes,
there,
the data can only show you so much.
Absolutely. And I think, sometimes we go overboard in terms of sort of trying to make the data tell us everything
Right.
when it can't. I often see these sort of, wild goose chases where companies are trying to pin down attribution, where, for example, a lead originated or what marketing programs influenced a particular opportunity.
Right.
And what's often lost in that discussion is the influencing factors that perhaps weren't the kind of causative agent of that opportunity emerging. And I call that sort of spiral marketing, in the sense that you have to be aware of all the things that are going on
Mhm.
around that opportunity throughout the sales cycle. And we have to be sort of cognizant of the fact that not everything can be perfectly measured. And just because it hasn't been perfectly measured doesn't mean that it isn't actually delivering value.
Right.
And that's where a lot of instinct and experience also comes in.
Yeah. Well, and we have to leave room for authenticity
Yes.
and organic.
Yes.
And, that really is the power, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have to leave
Mm-hmm.
space for voice and
Mm-hmm.
different things like that. So I love to hear that. And I appreciate you for sharing that. Now, you're at a stage in your career where you've moved past just pure marketing, like you were talking about. You
Mm-hmm.
were managing director for Europe at Nulogy. And then earlier this year, you stepped into the role of chief commercial officer. What does the role of CCO entail, and how are you leveraging all of the skills you've gained from 25 years of communication? And congratulations.
Well, thank you. I mean, really, the role is a reflection of the activity set and responsibilities that I hold here in the European market, which is essentially twofold. One, to build our brand, our reputation, our credibility in the market here, because although we've been operating globally for 2 decades, we haven't had a dedicated presence in Europe until just a few years ago.
Mm.
And so part of it is building that reputation over here. And then the second part of it is good old-fashioned quota carrying sales. So I am responsible for driving new sales in continental Europe and in the UK market. And those two things, building our reputation and driving new opportunities, are obviously intricately linked. And on that front, I think one of the best things any marketer can do is make a foray into sales, and certainly getting involved in sales. And I was responsible for sales as well at Bullfrog Power previously in my career, and now having the opportunity to manage the sales effort on the UK European side for Nulogy has been tremendously enlightening and a real growing experience as a professional. I think for marketers, understanding what happens actually right out there in the field directly with real customers is hugely valuable. And I would certainly recommend to other marketers to get as much field experience as they can to shore up their understanding of what customers want, need, and how they interact with your company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I talk about cross training all the time. And you're right.
Mm.
We need to stop. We need to step out of our silos, right? We need
Yes.
to give permission for people to be able to spend a little bit of time with some of the other roles, the other departments, to really get a better understanding. And if we don't do that, we're kind of doing ourselves, the company, each other, a bit of a disservice, right? Because knowledge really is key when it comes to marketing and understanding who you're talking to. Again, it's one of the reasons why we put that monthly group together, because
Mm-hmm.
we're getting them in front of clients, right? Potential clients, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to ask questions. And I think it's super important. And not only to the success of your marketing team, but for the success of the business as well. Um,
Absolutely. There's that ability to get out of your silo and into another area. I
mhm,
think that's a really good way of putting it, because it enables you to sort of build empathy for other areas of the business. And sales and marketing are often sort of slinging things at one another. I need more pipeline, or well, you need to do a better job of following up, and so on. That's common in a lot of companies.
mhm,
But if sales and marketing could, collaborate and work well together, which at Nulogy they really do, which is one of the things I love about the company,
mhm.
it can be really powerful. But part of it is that understanding and empathy of what the other side of the fence is trying to accomplish on their side.
Yeah. I mean, we're in 2024. Can we stop the blame game?
Exactly, exactly,
That drives
exactly.
me crazy. But this
Yeah,
this role involved a big move for you. You're a fellow Canadian, which is super exciting for me because I don't get to interview a lot of Canadians. And so
right.
you're Canadian, but you're currently based in the UK. How did that opportunity come about? How did you even say yes to it? Because that is a really big move. And what's been that experience like, moving from sort of that North America market to the European market?
Right. There's a lot of questions in there.
I
So
know.
so yeah, no, but they're good ones, and they've been obviously very interesting for me. So first of all, I'm actually both. I'm Canadian and British. I'm a
So
I'm
am
a dual
I.
citizen. There you go.
Hi.
And I have family on both sides of the pond, and I actually spent sort of my formative years, age 10 to 20, in the UK. So it wasn't completely a move to somewhere entirely new for me.
Mhm,
Um, but it was a big move, because I'd been, working most of my career in Canada up to that point. And how it came about and how I said yes to it was a little bit, goes back to the beginning of this conversation about how much of one's career is serendipitous and how much is designed or deliberate. So what happened was at the time I was the chief marketing officer in the Toronto office, and we were researching, and it fell on me to do the majority of this research to look into where we most fruitfully could expand the company. And the answer was clearly UK and continental Western Europe in particular. And so I built out a plan for how we should go about growing our presence in Western Europe. And it included putting people on the ground in the UK and hiring an MD there. At that point, given my role and given the fact that I'm a dual citizen and so forth, it also seemed kind of obvious who might be a potential candidate. And I was very fortunate to have the support of Jason Tham and Kevin Wong and our CFO at the time to make that big leap. And it was an absolutely tremendous opportunity, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I arrived here to launch our UK office on January the 6th, 2020.
Oh, yes. It's a good thing you had family there.
So it didn't go, as you can imagine, quite the way we had anticipated for the first sort of 18 months or so. But in many ways, everything that happened with COVID provided us also with an interesting opportunity to do that brand building, reputation building work, because we couldn't go anywhere. And so we weren't out and about. But we could do a lot of work, writing articles and basically educating the market here about what we could provide in terms of value. And I think in that sense, that period gave us a foundation for building the credibility that Nulogy now has in the European market.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that vision, because I know that Nulogy has a vision of collaboration and co-innovation. You've mentioned collaboration previously, and I know that you're passionate about digital transformation. So what are some of the biggest challenges you're hoping to tackle in the industry with some of these core principles?
I mean, essentially, the challenge we are committed to helping companies solve is that many large manufacturing companies are leveraging 3PLs and contract manufacturers and contract packers to accelerate their activities in the market, to accelerate their ability to bring products to market quickly, to accelerate product innovation, and so on, and to leverage those external supply chain partners to basically respond with greater agility to market demands, market signals. The problem, however, is that those big brands don't necessarily have the kind of visibility into what's happening in those external manufacturing environments that they're accustomed to having with their own internal manufacturing. And so what we want to do is light up that black box, actually illuminate the external supply chain environment and their relationships with those key suppliers in the same way that they're accustomed to having good visibility into their internal manufacturing. And so having a digital platform to enable that collaboration so that external supply chain partners can collaborate with manufacturers around key issues like order milestones and so forth, that's what we're enabling. And it's a big problem to solve, because more and more we're seeing that reliance on external providers to enable growth. But if you don't know what's going on out there, then it's going to be difficult to achieve that. So it's a big supply chain issue, and it's great to be part of a company that's solving such an important supply chain issue.
Well, and you're bringing all sorts of partners together. So that's the collaboration component. But through that, you're fostering innovation. not only
Yes.
with your digital platform to create that digital transformation, but you're also empowering innovation within those different stakeholders so that everybody can actually make better decisions, manage by exceptions, like all sorts of different things that just make the industry that much better. So I love that.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
you've said that
Mhm.
there is significant momentum driving women's involvement in supply chain in the UK. Can you give us a
Yes.
taste of what that looks like? Like what is it like as a woman in supply chain in the UK? What are the results of that difference? And, what change is it creating, right? What can we
Yeah.
learn from what you're doing over there here in North America? And I think in my experience from talking to people in Europe versus North America, there's not so much talk necessarily about like gender roles as much as there is in North America, but I could be wrong. So over to you.
Well, I think one of the things that I noticed very quickly when I came over here is just how well represented women are actually
Right.
in supply chain,
Mhm.
and in the logistics industry specifically, the warehousing world. I think there's been, certainly in the UK, a very deliberate effort to sort of move beyond the kind of historical, uh, perhaps reliance on men and the
Mhm.
dominance of men in leadership positions to bring and enable more women into leadership positions.
Right.
And so, if you walk into a conference in the UK for logistics, it's very even kind of representation and refreshing. And many organizations, including actually the United Kingdom Warehousing Association and the BCMPA, which is essentially the industry association for contract packers and contract manufacturers in the UK, both of those are led by women.
Hmm.
And there are a number of sort of coalitions of women executives in logistics and supply chain here, who regularly convene to sort of share best practices and share ideas and insights. And so I
Awesome.
think it's a very, there's a lot of good dialogue and a lot of good sort of
Mhm.
networking opportunities for women to share in their success and to support one another. So yes, it's kind of refreshing to see, and by no means do I feel certainly over here as though I'm the lone woman in the room or anything like that. It's
Mhm.
it's actually not like that over here, which is great.
And so that has kind of been the sentiment over your career, I guess. Over here in North America before you went there. Like what kind of like
Well,
what's the difference?
I mean, 30-year career,
Well,
you
yes,
do
okay.
you you
'Cause-
you you do see a lot of change.
yeah.
And I thought about, you gave me a bit of a preview of that question ahead of time, and I thought carefully about how to answer that. And I think the real answer is that maybe the first 15 years of my career, the kind of barriers and the things we typically think of as having held women back in the past were certainly very much still in play.
Mhm.
And many of the kind of cliched sort of obstacles that one hears about were certainly in play in the early years of my career. Um, but I'm really happy to say that I'd say the last 15 years has, at least has not been like that. And I've been very fortunate to have leaders, both men and women, who were, committed to enabling and realizing the benefits of a more diverse environment.
Mhm.
And so, in that sense, I've worked with very good people, very good mentors and leaders, who haven't allowed those kinds of biases and obstacles to get in the way of the success of their companies. Um,
Awesome.
and at Nulogy itself, the two, sort of original founders, Kevin and Jason, are, just fantastic in that regard. And I've always felt completely supported by them. It's been a wonderful place to work.
I love to hear that. Now,
Mm.
when doing the research for this episode, you've also said that it's never been more of an exciting time to be in supply chain. Why do
Oh,
you
for
say
sure.
that? Like, what's happening right now that's driving that
Right.
excitement, that momentum? And
Yeah.
maybe what's your advice to younger generations who may be looking to join the industry and sort of ride that
Right.
excitement and momentum?
I mean, it is an absolutely fantastic time to be in supply chain. The, you know, the pandemic made very clear to the world that supply chain is critical to society, and it made very clear to big businesses that they couldn't treat their supply chain organizations like an operational necessity. They had to recognize its highly strategic value to the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've seen since then is tremendous focus on and investment in supply chain in terms of things like automation and digitalization to ensure resilience of businesses, whatever may come in the future. And so there's been all this innovation around those kinds of issues over the last few years. And obviously, we at Nulogy are playing a part in that innovation in supply chain. And it is genuinely really exciting. And I would certainly encourage any young people who are thinking about a career that is absolutely, chock-a-block with opportunity. Supply chain is where it's at.
I like that. I use the term chock-a-block too, and it comes from my British background.
There you go.
And it's so awesome to hear somebody else use that. And that's really great advice too. Now, we've talked a little bit about your journey. We've talked
Mm.
about your experience as a woman. But I want to ask you, like, did you have any mentors, or was there a particular moment when you found your voice and stepped into your power? As a leader? And this question comes with a lot, I know, because
Mhm.
we talk about mentors, we talk about sponsors, it can get very overwhelming, very complicated. And you sort of feel like if you don't have a mentor, you've failed in life. And I just want to put it out there that if you don't have one, and they can come in different forms, and you
Mhm.
might just not have labeled it. So I
Right.
don't want anybody to get discouraged if they don't have one or think that they're having trouble finding one. But that's why we ask this question, but also finding your voice, right? Throughout a career journey, whether you're a man or a
Mhm.
woman, there's always that moment where you find your voice and you sort of step into that confidence to share
Mhm.
some of your innovative thoughts and perspectives.
I think those two things happened almost at the same time in my career. And when I worked for Greg Kiesling, who was the CEO at Bullfrog Power, he was certainly a mentor and taught me a lot about strategic planning. And he was he was the person who first put me into a sales function. He basically handed the enterprise sales portfolio over to me, and I had been,
Ah.
yes, I had been a communications person my whole career, and had never expected that to happen. Um, and he, I guess, saw ability in me that I didn't even see, and
Mhm.
wanted me to give it a go. And that was a true turning point in my career. That was a very powerful moment. Um, and um, I've never looked back from that. I really appreciated that opportunity, and it's definitely helped me to grow as a professional. Sort of as I mentioned
Mhm.
earlier, that being able to see both sides of the sort of marketing and sales equation, I think, is ever so valuable.
Mhm.
Um, so he was very influential. But when we think of mentors, we tend to think about someone who is in a leadership role, above us in a hierarchy sort of thing. But the other thing I wanted to stress is that while I haven't actually had many, sort of female bosses in my career, that doesn't mean that I don't feel I've been also mentored by women. And I'll give you one very recent example. That there's a woman who works in the sales area within Nulogy alongside me, and I was having a really good chat with her the other day and sort of said to her that I really admired the way she conducts herself in meetings, and I felt that I could learn a lot about the way to present information in meetings from her, because I've always admired the way she does that. And I think she was a little surprised because, sort of, she sees me as in a, maybe
Right.
more senior role and so on. But I don't think you ever stop learning, and you can learn from lots
Mhm.
of people, not just people who are your direct managers or, your CEO or whomever.
You just gave me goosebumps. I appreciate you for sharing that example because too many times we're not hearing that from leaders, right?
Mm,
These magical moments might be happening, but that we're not sharing them with others for them to understand that this is possible, first of
right.
all. And it's okay for leaders to say things like that, to be able to talk like that with their team members and express their appreciation in that kind of moment. And so I appreciate you for sharing that because a lot of times these things go unspoken, but it's
Mm,
very important for us to be able to speak that
mhm,
because trust is one of those things that you have to
mm,
build up with your team as a leader, but then also your team has to build that not only with you, but everybody around them as well. And that is one of the key ways that we can build that trust and build the stepping stones to a successful not only organization, but where people feel empowered and they want to spend their time with people. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So I really
Yes, I
appreciate you for
agree.
sharing that. Now, alongside being a supply chain superstar, you're
I'm
also
not sure I'd
very
call myself a superstar, but
I mean, let's just call it a superstar. But you're also very musical, and you actually have a diploma from the Royal Conservatory of Music. I mean, that's a pretty prestigious institution. So, was pursuing that part of how you carve out a work-life balance for yourself? Because I'm sure some people would be thinking, how on earth did you find the time? And second of all, what's your musical? Is it an instrument? Is it singing? What is it?
it's piano actually.
Okay.
Um, and and it was difficult to find the time for that, but over the years I eked it out in evenings and so on. Um, I think it goes back to the beginning of this conversation when I was talking about, like, I have more of a sort of arts background than a science background, and for me certainly creative endeavors, including playing the piano and creative writing and even things like showing my dog, are definitely part of work-life balance, and it's so important to make sure you've got that kind of time to unwind and give your brain something fresh to think about and sort of engage your creativity, because then not only is that fulfilling and enjoyable unto
Mhm.
itself, but I think it allows you to come back to work fresher and more capable, and there's lots of studies that sort of indicate that exercising your creative mind can then sort of improve your competence in the professional environment as well. So yes, definitely part of work-life balance, and just being a more effective human being generally, I think.
Yeah. Do you show your dog? What kind of dog do you have?
I have a Hungarian Vizsla,
Okay. I don't
and
know what that is. I'm
yeah.
gonna have to go look that up after this. It sounds cute. Have you won a dog show yet?
Yes, yes, she's won lots of things. she's
Wow, that's
she's very
awesome.
pretty.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Okay, so final question.
Mhm.
What does the future hold for you?
Well, I'm 60, and so I've still got lots of years in me and lots of energy for continuing to work on what I'm doing now, building the market here for Nulogy. Um, but I'm also cognizant of the fact that I'm in the sort of final chapters of my career. And so I do feel a responsibility to try to support and advise those who are kind of coming up in the supply chain world, and to support particularly young people who are looking to, as you put it, find their voice and perhaps more deliberately design their careers to go in a direction that works for them. The advice I always give to young people is to embrace ambiguity to a certain extent, because if you get too hung up on things being perfectly charted, you will miss opportunities. But at the same time, it's helpful to balance that with some deliberate planning around what you want to achieve in life, so that you get the best of both serendipity and deliberation.
I love that. What great advice. Well, what a great conversation. I mean, you have such wonderful positivity. Hearing you talk about the industry and how it has changed, how it is changing, how supply chain is evolving from a cost center into a competitive advantage, how
Mm-hmm.
that translates to real opportunity for younger generations to step in, become change makers. I mean, that's so exciting. And I'm sure the next
Absolutely.
generation of professionals, especially women, will be incredibly inspired. So, for the audience, did you have a guess at today's big question? Well, at the top of the show, I asked you, today's guest works for a brand that brings external and internal manufacturing functions together. But what percentage of the average brand owner's total production is managed by contract manufacturers? Well, it's 32%. So pretty much a third. And that's a big number to trust to external parties. So collaboration and the right technology really is key for that. Now, if you'd like to hear more from us at Let's Talk Supply Chain, we have more content for you featuring the best, the brightest in the industry. Head over to letstalksupplychain.com to check out the latest. And next week, come back. I'm going to be joined by Thomas of Digital Container Shipping Association, otherwise known as DCSA. And we're going to be talking about a brand new state of the industry report. Now, Josephine, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story with us today. Where can people connect with you?
On LinkedIn, Josephine Coombe. I have the advantage of being the only Josephine Coombe on the planet, so I'm easy to find.
I love that, Josephine. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode today.
Thank you, Sarah. It was a pleasure. Okay, bye-bye.